Hola. Welcome to episode 56 of Word to Your Mama. Today we have the legend, Garth Trinidad, aka Señor Trinidad. I asked him what he wanted his title to be, because he's starting a new chapter in his life, kids. And his title now is he's a Pisces and an Angeleno. So this episode is about his origins and kind of the deconstruction of Garth Trinidad and him starting new chapters. You guys probably know him from KCRW, producer and curator of some of the most legendary events here in LA and around the world, as music supervisor for Entourage. But in March of this year, this is 2021, we're at the end of 2021, still year 2 of pandemic, if you will. March of this year, after 27 years at KCRW, he left and he's starting this new chapter. And before you would say, oh, Garth Trinidad, oh yeah, DJ, curator, but he's more than that, kids. And that's what we find out in this episode. It was an honor and a pleasure to reconnect with an old friend that, as you hear from our conversation, the first time we met, it was like when I was one of my first jobs interning in the music industry, and he just opened arms and we felt like a kindred spirit, a kindred connection. It's great to hear the work that he's been doing, where he's at mentally, in his heart. And we talk about all that good stuff. We talk about staying safe in the pandemic, making those hard decisions about, unfortunately having to break promises because these are very unique times, right? You got to feel safe. About ending lifelong relationships because, your work, what you've been doing for a long time, what you put your heart and soul in, that's a relationship, and all the major transitions he's going through. We talk about things like past life regressions, his earliest music memory, how he actually graduated, got his degree in illustration from Otis, and how during that time, that's when he started DJing at KCRW, and how during that moment in his life, music won over art. But now the rest is coming together. His time as a music supervisor at Entourage, and how, consultant versus music supervisor is a thing. Being a consultant is going to win every time because of all the things that really actually go into being a music supervisor. And, trying to move back into, he's on the cusp of going back into that visual art world, being a writer, telling us his stories, and everything else is on the horizon. So let's get into it.
All good, man. But does that, I can't really tell because my picture's so small. Does that look cool?
Yeah, you look fine. Yeah.
You don't see my dirty laundry in the background?
No, not at all. It looks clean and pristine.
Just to the side.
Garth, how are you, man? I haven't seen you in forever.
I'm doing all right. I mean, I'm like, look, to be number one, alive, number 2, in good health, and number 3, to know that to have, friends and loved ones around me, like healthy, like my kids are in good health, and even my parents, they're doing all right. Like, I mean, they're elderly, so they have their issues and whatnot. But I'm just happy to be like in good health with like a pandemic still upon us. I mean, I'm gonna just be honest. Like, this is like whooping a lot of people's ass, and mentally and emotionally. And I pray for good health. Vigilant about my health. I try to be, I don't know. For me, it's like, I don't take it lightly.
Yeah.
And I even had, booked the night with, Asul, who's basically like booking and running grand performances.
Yeah.
And he had a huge responsibility for the summer, because it was like his first time, and he basically was just hired on, and he was the guy that was going to reintroduce the new grand performances as things started to open up. And I wanted to do like a really small boutique show, excuse me, and it's just something going down my throat the wrong way. It ain't nothing serious.
Oh, not stressed. We're not stressed. It's like you gotta give a little.
But like as the time progressed over the summer, because we had like a late summer booking, it was like late August. I was like, yo, like people are coming out in droves for these shows. I'm like, I asked him, like, I want to still keep mine like super small, just keeping in mind my goal and the idea that it's still a pandemic and it's cool, everybody coming out, but I kind of like don't want to promote mine and maybe just have like 50 people socially distanced, in the little amphitheater. And the game had changed by then. Like, he's like, dude, I'm so sorry. Like, we just have to keep the ball rolling. And I'm like, man, I can't do the show. I got to pull out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got to.
Yeah. Exactly. You got to do what you had to do for you and for your family, because these are the times. These are the times. I shout out to Azul, and I definitely want to reach out to him and talk to him and hear his story too. And I saw a lot of my friends, go to the grand performances. It was an amazing lineup, but it was an amazing. But
Azul, the perfect guy for that. You know what I mean? Like,
perfect.
that's his frequency right there. So I knew he was going to kill it. But what I underestimated was, and I shouldn't have, it should have been a safe assumption that people were just like ready to, come out and just be around each other. And I'm just not there yet. I'm just like, I got teenagers. I got like, I got kids that are going to school out of state and out of the country right now. So like, I'm on them. I'm like, yo, stay vigilant, like be safe. Just practice the little things. Like, don't stop. Wash your hands all day long. Don't touch your face. Like, don't be around too many big crowds. Like, be careful. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's hard. And it's so hard for kids. I mean, you have a son, and I feel like kids probably got it the hardest. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, little kids, big kids, all kids. Like,
because it's hard for adults. It's hard for adults. So to let alone, a teenage brain, a young child's brain, they're just supposed to be out in the world, and they're supposed to learn by being out in the world. And then when that's taken away from you, I mean, I give it up to these kids, it's like they roll with it, they deal with it. But, as an adult, I'm not okay. And I have the vocabulary and experience and the agency, and I still have my times where I wasn't okay. So it was a lot of talking. It's a lot of trying to understand, because have you and I ever been through something like this? No. Has a lot of the people in the world have we been through something like this? No, it was about, let's grow and learn together. Like, what is this? How are you feeling? Like, it's a check-in all the time. And, especially the past couple of episodes with my guests, I said low key grateful for this, past administration and the pandemic, because our people have been put in situations where we would have never known where they were landed on this spectrum. Like, are you the one that's like, the pandemic's over because you're over it? or are you like, no, I still care about others and I want to be safe. So it's like it's like, okay, if these things wouldn't have happened in succession like that, I would have never known. I would have been none the wiser, and I would have just kept rolling hard. And now it's like, oh, now I know. So I love hearing that, you did what you needed to do for you, and you felt safe. And I'm sure in your gut was screaming like, no, I got to pull out. I got to pull out of this.
Well, I was grateful that, Azul and I were able to, as busy as he was, most of it was over text messages. I would communicate with him. I'd reach out to him and be like, yo, this is what it is. This is what we're doing. And as we got closer, I'm like, so he's like, yeah, man, like I had to switch the whole game up. And now everything is moved to the big stage. And there's really, everything's been slated. So, grand performances, the shows are promoted together. You know what I mean? You have your individual promotion as, each show comes upon the date, but, they slate shows, there's general promotion in the beginning. There's, huge flyers and posters and, it lists, people that are coming and the dates. And so, they have a specific way that they promote. It's not like a club, you know what I mean? It's a concert venue and a performance venue. And I was like, man. And so, my partner, Mateo Sonolia, who, we have like a little side project, Trinidad Sonolia, where we do like a little cool kind of like, lit house, deep house kind of vibe. And, we put out some music over the years. So we were going to do a performance together. And then I had, Jungle Fire, we're going to do a performance. And then Open Mike Eagle was going to close the show, but it was going to be like a super tight, intimate, like almost like acoustic vibe as like a triple, set, like a little sunset vibe. And so that was the initial idea. And so it was like, yo, man, like the tumbleweed has grown and we have to shift it. Got to be big. I'm like, I can't do it. Because my partner was also like, I'm not comfortable. So we just had to I felt terrible. I don't like, as a promoter and a concert producer and curator over the years. I mean, I've done plenty of shows, put together plenty of shows and events. I do not like being the guy that's like, I can't do it. But thinking about everything, I'm just like, you know what? I'm not ready to be around 5,000 people. And that's just a personal preference.
Yeah.
Everywhere I go, I try to be outside. Like if I go eat or whatever, I mean, last night, since I've walked away from radio and, in that kind of like cooled off on like the whole DJ thing, I've done like 2 like private parties this year. One of them was last night. It was like a special event for the Fear of God brand. They're launching like a new loungewear series and they needed somebody to come out and play like strictly jazz vinyl. So my boy called me up and I'm like, yeah, of course. I love Jerry, the founder. I love what they're doing. I'm like, I'm all in. But what's the money look like? And then what is the setup like?
Please believe it. What's the safety precautions?
Because the other party I did was like outside. And I'm like, okay, cool. So last night was supposed to be outside, but I get there and the plans had shifted. So I had to be inside. So I was like, I mean, it was fine. It was a small enough group of people, but it was like, wow, it's crowded in here right now.
Yeah.
And look, I'm working on, evolving my consciousness. I'm working on like the deconstruction of my life. It's, negative patterns and cycles. I'm finalizing a divorce. I've also sort of, in a way, I don't want to call it a divorce because I think it frames it up in a negative way. But, I left KCRW, but that's also a lifelong relationship. That was a partnership, if you will.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it like, okay, I'm going through 2 divorces. I'm like raising these kids to be adults, taking care of my elderly, helping my elderly parents. I'm basically sort of in this weird space right now where I'm working on manifesting things that I want to come into my life. But the first part of that is becoming selfish with my time again, which is something that, as a spouse and a parent, I haven't experienced that in so long that I have to shake my brain up and be like, okay, you have to come up with a new routine. It's almost like I have to be in a relationship with myself.
Please believe it. For sure. I
got to date myself.
Yeah.
Got to take care of myself. And I haven't really done that. And let me see. Yeah. Like over 20 years, you know what I mean? So I don't even think that way. Like every the way that I think, and you relate because you're a parent and forgive me because you and I haven't talked in so long. Are you and Raka still rocking it? I mean,
yeah.
Okay.
He says hello, by the way.
Yeah. And please.
He's putting little man to sleep right now while I'm doing this.
Please give him a hug and a kiss for me because he's one of my ever. And you guys together is like, your inspiration. So you understand that because family, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But there comes a time where we have to shed that identity of especially being a parent, and get back to who we are as people, as a person, as a soul,
Yeah.
you know, having an experience. So that's where I'm at. Like I'm reading some Eckhart Tolle right now, and I'm just like, I'm peeling back the layers. It's a very kind of deconstructive period of my life, and it's a trip.
I mean, I feel like anyone who's a parent understands it, but I think on a deeper level, being a creative, that's another
Absolutely.
layer. You know what I'm saying? It's like, while I'm in it, the past couple of years and even right now, it's like, what's my identity outside of being like, as a mom, I had to put stuff on hold in a different way than, you know, Raka had to. Do you know? It's just like, that's the dynamic of what was happening. And it's like finding that out. So I can't even imagine the deep work that you are doing. Just seeing like your Instagram and you're posting, like you're out in the desert or you're out at that one container place in the I know the company, I can't think of it right now, but you know, it's just like, oh, he's I didn't know exactly what you're going through, but I was like, he's in it. Like I could see it. Like I could see you were doing the work. I
barely, to be honest with you.
You're what?
I'm just starting. Like I barely started.
But I'm glad that you're there. I'm glad that you're there. You look amazing as always, and you know, I don't know what the right words are. I am sorry to hear that, you know, you're going through these different transitions, but I'm sure that you know, you guys are in a better place for it, and that you know, I'm excited to see what happens with you in professionally and personally, you know, and I like the way you're talking, the way you're thinking. So I know you're just starting and you're deep in it, but as someone who's always been a fan of you as a person and what you do for the culture, what you've done, I'm excited for the new chapter. Like as soon as I saw that you were leaving, and I was like, I don't know the motivations, but I'm excited for whatever. Like you're always going to land wherever you need to land. And I think, you know, you've always had like this, I don't know, like this deep grounded energy. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, I feel like I think you're similar like Rocket. Like you don't say too much, but when you say it, it's profound and you're always thinking though. What's your sign? Are you a Gemini?
I'm a Pisces. I forgot my rock, but I think it has something to do with like my other signs, because Pisces are, you know, move around, and you know, we're the dreamers, and we're always dreaming up stuff and overthinking stuff, and a million ideas floating through our head. And so I think that grounded energy is something that has to do with whatever, like you know, and I had my my chart done like last year, but I like forgot everything. I have it written down somewhere. It has something to do with like the different energies, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not deep off into astrology at all. Like
me neither.
I actually believe in it. I believe that there's, you know, that science is crazy to me. You know, once I really started to understand like the signs and the planets, I'm like, whoa, this is like, wow, like personality type. Okay, this is like, okay, I could dig this, but I'm not like well studied, if you will.
Yeah, same.
You know, but I definitely appreciate it. And I'm learning a lot about myself as far as like being a Pisces and whatever my rising sign is and all that kind of stuff. And it just makes so much sense. And I appreciate that. And I feel like, you know, Rock and I are like kindred spirits in that way. You know, when I met him and I interviewed Dilated and we talked and everything, and I was just like, yeah, you know, this is like, you know, just one of those cats. Like we relate on that level without even really communicating too much, you know?
I think old souls. I think you guys are, I feel like I'm an old soul. Our son is like, you guys been here before before, you know, I think multiple times. And I think that's where that groundedness comes from. Like you're knowing you've been here before. It's like, you're not first time, not the first time at the rodeo or something like that.
I agree with that. I'm digging deeper into that. Like one of the things I'm going to do, like part of the work I want to do, I got a laundry list of stuff that I want to do. But like, I want to get into past life regression. So I think that could hold the key to like, not just past traumas of this life, but, prior lives that I think we hold on to as spirits. I was talking to my lady about this recently. We'll dive into these things. And she's like almost 20 years younger than I am. And so we have these really interesting conversations because of like these different perspectives. Mm-hmm. Like we see certain things that have weight to them very differently, like time as a construct. We have totally different perspectives about time. But one of the things we were talking about was like suicide. Mm. And I saw there was a documentary series, it's probably still on Netflix. It's called Surviving Death. And it's like 6 episodes. And it opened me up to something that I had thought about, or think about every now and then, in that you can't necessarily free yourself by taking your life because you carry it with you into whatever your next experience is going to be. It's not a shortcut. And, I have an opinion about, suicide. I don't think that it's ever the right thing to do. If I saw somebody trying to commit suicide, I'd be like, let's not do that. You could live another day and we could figure this out. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of person I am. But then some people have a different perspective. Like, yo, you don't understand. You might not understand the level of pain that the person is dealing with and experiencing. But does that mean, it's like, okay, cool. Like, do you? Like, I'm not there yet. I'm not, I haven't convinced myself that I would just be like, hands off. You got to do what you feel like you need to do. Because I feel like you don't have that shortcut. Like, that's not real. Like, you don't free yourself that easily.
Yeah.
And I think that's just divine common sense. You know what I mean? Like, you carry things with you. And so, like, past life regression, I feel like, okay, yeah, I want to dig into that because I feel like there might be some stuff that went on in prior lives or experiences or worlds that, outweigh some of the stuff that I went through as a kid. Like, some of the stuff might be deeper than that,
Yeah. I mean, because you think about, I don't know if you've ever heard like epigenetics, like the trauma is literally within the cells. Like my grandmother, my abuelita, when she had the egg of my mom in her, it already transferred that, like, scientifically backed. So like if it's within the cells, it's within the energy. If it's ancestral, generational, it for sure. Like it like I'm not hotep about stuff, but I believe like it's a mix. It's like a mix of like scientifically backed shit and a little bit of woo woo stuff. Like that's me. You know what I'm saying? Like I can't go too much into over here, but I feel it's a mix. So that makes sense to me. The past life thing. Totally.
It's funny because I spent some time when I was married, in the church. I grew up Catholic. Did you as well?
Yes. That's another level.
The Catholic childhood, right? I'm sure we have plenty of stories to share. I went to Catholic school in the 09. It was a trip. But, I got married and my ex was a staunch born again Christian. And so, wanting to be a good spouse. And, I did the deep dive and I took it upon myself to begin reading the Bible and attempting to decipher things. And immediately, I caught wind and I wasn't doing a deep dive into metaphysics per se. But around that time, I'm a student of like, hip hop, but conscious hip hop I was paying attention to.
Yeah.
I'm listening to NWA, but I'm also listening to, Boogie Down Productions. I'm listening to KRS-One because he was studying metaphysics. He actually called himself, by the time he was in his late 20s, a metaphysician. And I'm like, okay, I'm listening to what he's talking about. And so when I was reading scriptures and stuff, I'm like, this is metaphysical. Like, this is all metaphysical stuff. And one of the scriptures I remember that points to what you're talking about in terms of the science of epigenetics is like, God says, I will visit the sins upon the 3rd and 4th generation. And that points directly to that. And I'm like, well, that's what the Bible's talking about.
Yeah.
You know, it's science.
Science.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's a trip.
It
There's
is
nothing.
a trip.
It's not like, you know, this like religiosity that we can't figure out. It's like, oh, this is what that means.
Yeah.
Everything is decipherable. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So yeah, it's a trip. So I'm definitely going to do that work. I'm like looking into like fascia work because like you pointed out, it's in the cells. And so that trauma actually gets crystallized in your body, you know, in your, you know, the muscle tissue and the cartilage, and it just gets in there and hardens. So I want to like, you know, I want to get all that out.
Yeah.
You know,
there's an amazing book that my therapist a couple years ago, when I started going to a therapist again, recommended. And I recommend it all the time. I talk about it almost in every episode. It's called The Body Keeps a Score. And there's an even longer name. And it's by, I'll send you the link.
I've heard about the book. I haven't written it down. Send me a link, please.
Game changer. Do you know what I'm saying? That one and this other one, game changers, because I was like, oh, makes all the sense in the world. So let's start, you know, like I always say on here, I have an amazing tribe of people, and this is a great way for me to reconnect, and then I get to learn things that I would, you know, we'll say what's up at the event, at the party, at the club. You'll be spinning, so I can't really talk to you, you know, or whatever. So I don't get to know these little, you know, trinkets of goodness. So
hey man, like you and I are also kindred spirits. Like I remember when I first met you, I'm like, yo, this is my girl right here. I feel like this is my like my cousin. You know what I mean? Like it was like, you know, I remember, I think, what was it? The first time we actually met face to face was at the radio station in the basement.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, at the old, because, you know, people listening, they have a new place now. But yeah, so I wrote that down. I was like, I was trying to remember how we met. Frank, I was working for Frank. I was interning with Frank for the Unbound project. Frank Sosa. Frank Sosa, if you're listening to this, come on, man. Come on the show. I want to talk to you. I want to reconnect. And then I went there and I don't know. I felt the same way. I was just like, I feel like I know him. And then I tell everybody, I was like, oh, and then it was so dope because you were so awesome. You made me feel so welcome. I think when you announced that you were boning out when you were leaving, I remember I posted that. I was like, wow, he made me feel so welcome. I was new in the business, new in the scene, you know, just moved up to LA. I lived by myself. So I was going to all these things by myself. And I was venturing into this music world and this hip hop world where everyone was like, be careful with the dudes, you know, and this and that. And you were just one of those solid dudes. You made me feel welcome. And then you gave me the honor of like recording. I don't know if you used it, but it felt amazing just recording. Do you remember that? You were like, can you say Chocolate City in Spanish on the mic?
I used all them joints. As long as it was fresh, I have them on like cassette somewhere.
No way.
Yeah, in the shoebox.
Yeah, man, I felt the same way. So I'm happy to hear that you felt it too. I was just like, I know him.
Yeah,
just good peeps, just quality peeps. Also, do you remember it was for Keeping in Time premiere?
Mm-hmm.
And you were like, hey. I wasn't known as Ritzy then. So you're like, hey, Marissa, da da da. You're like, I want you to, do you know Raka? Do you remember that? Yeah. So it was like the party for Keeping in Time, which is an amazing doc. I'll have a link for that for everybody. You know, Mochila, B+, Eric Coleman, the whole gang. It's amazing. It was the first one, and it was the party. So we were in I forgot what club it was at. And then you're like, hey, come here. I want to introduce you. Do you know Raka? But Raka and I were already dating, but I told him not to tell anybody. Oh. And so we pretended like we didn't know each other. We're like, oh, hi, nice to meet you.
I don't remember that, but that is so.
I love that story so much because I was just like, listen, I'm a one of the only, you know, few females in the scene here in LA, and I have to talk to DJs all around the world, like all around the country. I don't want people to think that I got a job because of you. I don't want people to think like it's tough out here.
Yeah.
You know, go listen to Mona Lisa's episode. Go listen to Rachel Ramos's episode. Like rap game stories of a female in the rap game in the music biz. And so I was just like, don't say anything. I don't, he was like, probably like, what? Okay. And I was just like, don't say, I don't want anyone to know. So when you came here, like, here, I want to introduce you to Rock. I was like, oh, hi, nice to meet you. And then we laughed about it later.
I love it. I love it.
So Garth, where are you born and raised? LA?
I was born in upstate New York because my parents were going to school back east. But they were both like, where's my mom born? They were both raised in LA. And they went away to school, had me. And they were young and wild, you know what I mean? So my mom left Pops back east and she came back to LA. And so she was working and I was like, you know, staying with my grandma while she was at work and stuff. So those are some of my earliest memories. But yeah, I basically been in like, you know, South LA and then spent my like junior high and high school years in the West Valley. But, you know, kind of going back and forth because, you know, my dad came back to LA when he was done with school. And so, you know, I basically was in LA in the Valley, I was just kind of like my stomping ground was over the hill, back over the hill, you know. So, yeah, I mean, you know, I'm just a LA City kid, basically.
LA City kid. So because you can't think of LA music scene, you can't think of that certain era of, you know, electronic and hip hop without thinking of you. What was your first memory of music? Was it like your parents listening to their stuff? Like, what was that for you?
Yeah. I have, you know, like very sort of quiet, soft memories of like early childhood, like being a toddler and, you know, hearing a piece of music that I probably couldn't identify for you unless I was hypnotized or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But, you know, my parents, they were young. I mean, they had me in their early 20s. And so when I'm growing up in LA, these are parents who are like in their mid to late 20s and they're like partying all the time. And, you know, when you have kids, and back then it was in the 70s, it was like house party central. You know what I mean? So they throwing house parties and getting lit. And, you know, the kids is kind of like chilling in like the den or the upstairs or whatever. So we just letting them, they doing their thing downstairs and don't come downstairs. Like, unless, you know what I mean? So I was sort of raised on that like sound. And they were playing like all their dance music was like funk and R&B, you know what I mean? So I have memories of that. But one of my, probably the most powerful memory in terms of like an early music memory that like truly affected me. And I've told this story a couple times. We were up in the mountains somewhere. I want to say it was probably Big Bear. It could have been Mammoth. I don't know. But I remember it was cold and I had a jacket on and we were in the parking lot of some kind of like market. And it was either a Camaro, I think it was a Trans Am, because I was into cars when I was little. And I think it was a Trans Am. Came in the parking lot, windows down, and all the way turned up was Genius of Love from Tom Tom Club. And I remember I was walking, and we were either walking toward or from the market, and I stopped. That song came out in like 81, 82. So I'm like 7, 8 years old at the time. And as soon as I heard it, it just, my brain, my body, my heart, everything was like, this is my world. Like, this is something otherworldly. And I immediately was just like taken with that song. And it was like, wow, I was just blown away in that moment. So that's probably the most powerful, like early memory I had, because it literally stopped me in my tracks. It was, and still remains like one of my favorite songs. And I think one of the most phenomenal, just like productions, you know what I mean? Because I'd never heard anything like that before, you know, and it's set off so much that followed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that Tom Tom Club was heavily influenced by George Clinton.
For sure.
They referenced James Brown in the song, but I know they were listening to Roger, Zach. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But they had this European slant, and they just did something different with, you know, the little vocalizations and the lyrics and the drop-ins and like the James Brown. Like it was like it was something that I like to describe as bewitching.
Yes,
you know?
It is. And so, when you hear it today, present day, does it automatically take you back to that image you just painted for us? Do you want to support original content that supports diverse voices? Why not support Word to Your Mama? You're listening to it right now. Become a patron. Head over to patreon.com/WTYM. There are 4 patron levels to choose from, including Good Looking Out, I'm Down, Hell Yeah, and Please Believe It. Benefits include patron shoutouts, exclusive patron-only content, and so much more. Head on over to patreon.com/WTYM to take your support to the next level. Gracias.
Hell yeah.
And it still holds up?
Every time.
That's amazing, because that's one of my favorites, one of my songs, and I remember hanging out at my cousin's in the summer, and we were next to the crack house, and we were having like summer outdoor parties and just doing things we shouldn't have been doing. But that song always takes me there. I was like, I don't know, 12 or something. Like, it had already been out, but like, it was the first time I was able to experience it, like face to face, you know, in like an outdoor party setting in this situation. And it's always immediately takes me to that moment. And it's just like, it gets me like on a molecular level, and just like,
yeah. Yeah, molecular, straight up.
Yeah. Love that song. So one thing we've never talked about, and I didn't know, and I don't know how I didn't know this, you went to Otis.
Oh, I thought we talked about that. Okay, yeah.
No, you went to Otis College of Art and Design. That's where I wanted to go to school, but I couldn't afford it. I couldn't go. So let's talk about that shit.
I got lucky. I was able through my parents to get a bunch of loans, and I got a couple of grants.
Dope.
And I started in 95. I was able to skip foundation year, because I'd been doing like night school and whatnot at like art center and, other like art classes on the side, trying to like, get my portfolio developed enough to like, skip foundation year, because it was certainly a school that I was looking at going to. I also wanted to go to art center, but I felt like as much as I loved art center and what it was doing, there was a small voice inside of me that kept saying like, yeah, it's too corporate, and I'm not a big corporate cookie cutter kind of guy, but I took classes there. I loved the professors. I mean, the teachers that were professors, teachers that were there. I guess there were some professors, but the instructors that were there that I studied under. But when I saw Otis and I started to meet people from Otis, I'm like, you know what, this is more like my vibe. And then I ended up like getting into a cool living situation that wasn't too far from there. And, I couldn't really I felt like I couldn't move to Pasadena at the time, and I didn't want to commute every single day. Like, it's just, so it just worked more in my favor to go to Otis. So I spent 3 years at Otis, graduated in 98. But my class was there during a very tumultuous time. There was a transient administration that was at Otis. And so the students in my class in particular we were like known as the troublemakers, because we were like, we're over here paying all this money and we don't feel like we're getting what we need to get in terms of like spending our time here. And I think in some of the teachers from the past, and even some of the alumni, have told me that because of like my class's antics, a lot of things were set in motion that helped Otis kind of become what it is now. We made such a fuss. Like, we were always banging on the door of the administration, like, yo, we need to take a meeting with you because we're concerned about this and we need that. And we're not getting this. And we're sitting here and our teachers aren't showing up and we're calculating the money we're spending or we're going to pay back. And like, we're not getting what we need. You guys, even if you're not permanent here, you still got to take care of your students. And we were, at the time, I think the administration was more focused on like design. And we were like, my class was more focused on like illustration and like, you know, I remember one of my friends was, you know, trying to get an animation. And so it was more the illustration type thing that my class wanted to get into. And so we felt like we were being left behind. And so we were like, you guys got to step your game up. And so we didn't necessarily get to experience that while we were there, but we fought for it. So it was, you know, it was still a good time. I mean, it was Otis. It was, you know, being around a bunch of artists, philosophers all day, you know, doing cool stuff. It was great, you know.
So were you, because that's what you wanted to do, or was it music or both, or where were you headspace wise at that time?
I flirted with the idea of being a DJ, but all my life I've been a visual artist. That's what I did. I was known for that. I was the cool kid in school because I could draw. You know, you remember that? You know, oh, you could draw. Like, draw me something. You know, I was that kid. You know, I was like the high school newspaper cartoonist, and I started like a little airbrush business.
I did not know any of this, Garth. This is amazing.
The Bell Biv DeVoe video that came out. Remember the Poison video when Michael Bivins had the overalls on with the airbrush graffiti?
Yeah.
So I was living in the Valley, and so that started to become a trend.
Yeah.
But they didn't have any like graffiti artists in the Valley.
Yeah.
That were doing airbrush work like that. Not really at the time when it started. So kids would take their like denim jackets and overalls to like the swap meet in the Valley.
Yeah.
But those guys were like heavy metal airbrush artists. So the kids would come back to school wearing these like weird graffitied up this gear. And I'm like, that ain't right. So I'm like, what, you guys I'll do it. Come to me. So I begged my parents. They went in, got me an airbrush. I commandeered the garage and I spent all weekend in the garage, like airbrushing people's stuff up. Like, that's what I was doing.
Amazing.
In high school. It was fun. But yeah, so that was my thing. I wanted to get into, you know, film production, like as a set artist and designer. I wanted to design, you know, costumes and characters. Like, I wanted to be one of the illustrators for like animation, film, like, but on the development side, like storyboard. Like, I wanted to get into that. But while I was at Otis, because I was a music lover and I was being immersed, having moved back to LA into the music scene, ultimately that won my heart. So even though I went through school and completed school, by the time I graduated from Otis, I had Chocolate City.
Oh, got it.
Because I got on the air in 96 and I had like a late night weekend shift. Matter of fact, for a minute, I had like Saturday and Sunday from midnight to 3 while I was in school. But by the time I graduated, like in 98, I was already on the air 5 nights a week.
No.
So that kind of like really hindered my progress as a student at Otis. Like I didn't do my best work because all of a sudden I'm like eating up music.
Yeah.
And being out and meeting people. Like, so I was torn, you know.
That makes sense because I didn't move up because I graduated from Long Beach. I didn't move up till it was like 90, maybe 99. And then I think 99 maybe was when I started doing the stuff and started, because I moved up to K-Town by myself. And that's when I was doing that stuff. And I was interning at the Wake Up Show. And so like, you were like deep in. So I was like, oh, everyone's like, oh, Garth Trinidad, you know, because I was in college. I wasn't paying attention to that. I was like, you know, trying to survive. So I wasn't, you know, so I wasn't really knowing, but like, I heard of you, I heard of the show. But when I got to it and I started like being in the scene, I was like, oh, they're like, he's been doing that for, so I just thought DJ, you know, But creative, what I like to make sure people understand here is that the non-linear career path, but also creative is a creative, right? So, you know, you could do it, you know, of course, that makes sense. It's not like what you used to, I wasn't like what you're an illustrator. It was more like, I didn't know that was like part of your path too, you know, because if you're creative, you're creative with that, whatever. It's like, it doesn't matter the medium. It doesn't matter the process. If you're a creative, you're a creative. Yeah. But that's amazing. Do you still do stuff?
That's one of my goals. Yeah. Like I was referring to goals. You know, it as a creative, you know, it takes discipline because you have to immerse yourself in that space. It really is like, almost like practicing a certain level of detachment from, you know, the things that sort of distract us in the world. You know, get into a zone. I mean, you know, every once in a while I've done over the years, over the last, you know, since I got into radio and DJing and kind of left that visual space, done a couple of pieces of work, you know, some paintings or whatever. I've actually posted a couple of things on my IG. But that it's a goal. It's a goal to just start to draw every day. And I haven't been able to do that. Like there was a spurt where a friend of mine and I started to like share pictures every day. We would like do a sketch and like text back and forth to try to keep each other accountable. You know, she busy, I'm busy. So we did it for a little while. And then it was like, you know, all right, we'll get back to it at some point. But ultimately it's like, that's part of what I'm referring to when I say I have to like recalibrate my whole way of thinking into creating a space for my creativity.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I decided like I needed to get a divorce. Like my creativity, the creative spark, I could feel it. It was like going out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, if you're going to be in a relationship, the relationship itself should serve the creative spark, not be a hindrance to it. And ultimately that's not about putting responsibility on the other person at all. This is about the self. It's about the know. It's about the awareness, you know?
Yeah.
And I be aware.
Just earlier today, and I haven't finished the episode, I was listening to a podcast with Amy Sherald, the artist that did Michelle Obama, the famous, right? And she was talking about, she has an amazing story in general, and she doesn't really do these things. So it's awesome to hear her talk about her journey and stuff. But she was saying like she was not in any relationship. Like she feels that she wouldn't be where she's at today, finding her voice, finding her style, all these things to where she's at now. She didn't find it until she was like 30 something, 36 or something. And she doesn't feel she would have gotten to that space if she had been in relationships. Now she has a partner, the love of her life. And she's like, she made a joke. She's like, can we just like split up for like 2 months? Cause I got these deadlines. Because you want to be, I feel like I was in my best zone, you know, and I love the supernatural bear, you know, our son and stuff like that. I love him to death. And he's a mirror. As you know, these little humans are mirrors, and, you know, I'm a better person for it. But, you know, when I was able to just, you know, people don't understand whether it's music, if it's visual or anything, you're writing. A big part of the process is that like milling around, like, you know, the marinating stage, the, you know, where people on the outside looking in would be like, they're doing nothing. No. That's part of the process. And when you are stretched in so many directions, the essence of you, you know, is, you know, the parent, the partner, like, you know, I think that's why Rock and I work so well you know, having our little humans, because we were that Venn diagram of like my own thing, his own thing. We only overlapped a little bit. So I felt like I could do whatever. 3:00 in the morning, the dead time, I was like my best creative thing, you know, all that stuff. And I could do all that. But then it shifts, right, when you become a parent. So I get it. And I feel like this is even more exciting because you're peeling the layers, you're doing these deep dives, Garth, and then you're going to you have the space now, I feel like, right? Like the bandwidth and the spiritual space to explore and find out what it's going to be. And it might not be pretty in the beginning, but it's going to be coming out, and it's therapeutic. Like the zone. I miss getting in that zone, where it's like, oh shit, it's been 6 hours. I didn't know, but I was able to be in that 6 hours because I didn't have to cook for nobody. I didn't have to do, you know what I mean? So I'm excited for you, Garth. I'm like super excited. Okay. So I want to talk about, I love music so much, of course. That's why, I went to school for art, but I went into the music industry, and then it shifted and I went to both things. But whenever there's a show I love TV as well. Whenever there's a show and it's, the music's on point, I'm just like, who's the music immediately, who's the music supervisor? So I'm going to mention some names. You probably know them personally, but like on Euphoria in Atlanta, Jen Malone. Crazy skills. White. Kyer Lehman does Insecure. Amazing. White. Reservation Dogs, Tiffany Anders. Amazing. Also, she's amazing because she responded to me. I was like, what is that track? That opening track. Have you seen Reservation Dogs yet?
No.
Ugh.
Yeah.
You're going to laugh and you're going to cry. And it's like, we've been needing something like this. It's one of my favorite shows that's come out. There's that one, I didn't know who it was. I knew it was Yasin Bey, but I was like, what is this mix? Is it a mix? And she was like, I go, what's that? The pilot, the intro track. And it's by Hallucination, with guest starring Yasin Bey, Narcy, and Black Bear. It's called Red. It is amazing. Tiffany Anders, White. So all my favorite shit, right? So you're a music supervisor, and I didn't know that you did music supervision for Entourage. How did that come about? And have you seen, I mean, these are people that are currently for these shows that I love, and they're white. Where are more people like you? Where are the people of color? What's happening here?
I appreciate that. I would say that I've done music supervision, but I stopped calling myself a music supervisor because I don't like doing music supervision.
Well, there it is.
I learned how to do it through, a mentor of mine who's like one of the, most successful, phenomenal music supervisors in the last, 30 some odd years or whatever, 40 years. His name's G. Mark Roswell. People call him Gilly. But, he's worked with the best. He's worked with the Denzels, and he's worked with like the biggest names all these years, and he does a great job, and he's white, but once I learned that like music supervision really it requires a certain temperament. It requires a lot of time. I respect any good music supervisor because I understand how much time it takes to get that song, to clear that song, to create that song, get it synced up. Like like I much prefer the role of being a consultant than a supervisor, look, I'm a creative and I have other creative stuff I want to do. And I know that being a music supervisor, not, comparatively, I feel like music supervisors are like, in a way, they function almost like attorneys have to function, like the level of
CCC
grind. Like it's just a lot of work and a lot of attention to detail. So creatively speaking, you have to have a vision. You got to be able to communicate with the producers, with the director. You got to have relationships. Of course, you got to have that. It's almost like you're a mix of A&R, you're a mix of attorney, you're a mix of DJ. Like you got to have a knack for like, putting sonic to visual. You know what I mean? You have to feel it, not just see it, but you have to see it, hear it in a way that's like, you got to have a magic about you. Like, oh, this is going to work here. And then the attention to detail stuff is like, would this person be playing this in their car at this time?
Yeah.
Or if we walk into this bar or this club or this restaurant or this shop or this elevator, does this make sense? So it's a lot of detail. So do I like music supervising? Yes. But do I want to do it? Hell no. Like I learned early on that that's not my temperament. Like to do that it requires full-time attention.
Yeah.
That's just not what I want to be. So people call me up like, yo, you down to music supervise? I'm like, nope. I love it, but if you need a consultant, like holler at me. If you need me to put you together with some people, like let me know.
Yeah.
But like the Entourage story, it was Gary Calamar, who's I think he has a show. He left KCRW a few years ago. Just a killer ear for like good, pop music that's not mainstream. And he understands that there's like a connective tissue with like pop music from all around the world and all genres from like, going way back to the present. And I've always admired and appreciated Gary's ears. He was, he's one of the KCRW OGs, that really helped shape the sound of the station. And then he left and I think he's over at KCSN. I think he's at CSUN's station, which I think is where Nick Harcourt is as well for the mornings.
Oh.
I think they're at CSUN. But don't quote me. all the left of the dial radio, man, it's still confusing. But I listen to all of them. Switch back and forth. Anyway, so Gary, who was a DJ at the time at the station, who's basically I consider a friend of mine, was approached by Lori Nimhauser, who was the line producer at Entourage. They were they were in their third season, moving into the fourth season, and they wanted to switch up the music. They had a small music supervision firm that was like really deep into like pop and mainly hip hop. Like that was their whole vibe. So that's kind of like what the viewers were getting for the first 3 seasons of Entourage was like music that was going to help sell the show. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like hits. And then like, Doug Allen, who was the creator of the show, he would want to have like a classic rock song for the end credits. So that was like the Entourage formula,
Yeah.
So third season they're coming out of. Lori's like, you know what? We need to spend less money on the music, and we want more interesting music. Mm-hmm. We want like something more realistic, something more underground, something more raw. Like, we need to have some supervisors come in that can really plug us into like independent bands and like indie rock and like classic funk and like 90s hip hop, like just mix it up.
Yeah. So
Gary's like, you let me holler at Garth. Like, he and I could like, we could work that out for you. We could make it hot. And so Scott Venner was a consultant. Scott's a huge music supervisor now. And he was tight with Doug. And so it ended up being the 3 of us is like the music team for Entourage for the 4th season. And then during the 4th season, I think it was the writer's strike that happened.
Oh yeah.
And the recession was going on. So all this stuff happened and I didn't return for the 5th season. I think there were probably too many of us. And then I didn't want to go back for less money and they were offering less money.
Yeah.
And because I was spending so much time being a music supervisor, I felt like I'm not going to feel good in my soul if I accept money. And, part of me was like, I should have. And the other part of me was like, no, you did the right thing. Like, you're good. You're fine.
Yeah.
Because I had a career. Like I was in radio and I was DJing and I'm doing voiceover work and I'm doing shows. Like when I was doing Entourage and we had like small children we were raising, like I didn't sleep.
I bet.
I probably on average was getting like 2 hours of sleep a night. Like it was, I was gaining weight. Like, my health was like deteriorating. So I was like, I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know how much went into music supervision until I was because you hear good music in shows, right? Like Grey's Anatomy, like they, they really flipped the script, changed the game as far as like where the songs it make or break people, right? And stuff like that. But then looking at shows that I love that were rare, people of color shows, then that's when I was like, all these shows I mentioned, they're all of color, Black and Indigenous. And I was just like, well, we got some music supervisors of color. And it's like, no, we don't. But then I looked up, I was like, I need to know more about Jen Malone because she did Euphoria and Atlanta. I need to know who this person is. And then, her story's crazy too, but I was just like, she broke down the science and mathematics of her job. And I was like, nah, that's not what I thought it was. I thought it was more the consulting, let me pick these. And then, you do, but yeah, it's crazy. How are you doing on time?
Have your kids been in a house playing video games in your space way too long? Now you can get them outdoors and still be social while social distancing at the skate side after school and group skateboarding classes. Skate students get to improve their skating and decompress after a long day or week of school. This program is awesome for beginners to get started or advanced skaters to take their skills to the next level. Go to theskateside.com and learn about our COVID-safe programs in Santa Monica, Culver City, Glendale, and South Pasadena. That's theskateside.com. The Skate Side. More kids skating.
I'm good. Just to give like some context, right? Because I think you were pointing at something that I wanted to, get to before we ended the music supervision.
Sí.
The music supervision career, it's attached to Hollywood.
Yeah.
Hollywood, as we know, in terms of like, setting aside what's been happening for talent, for artists and actors. Love the revolution that's going on, love the exposure. But when it comes to writers, directors, editors, producers on each level, like pre, during, and post, music supervisors, these are all, careers that require, a certain set of resources that someone needs to be exposed to early on in their life, in their formative college years, et cetera, to pursue those career paths. And those, when it comes to Hollywood, it's been reserved for mainly white people. My lady is a producer, a young producer at Fox. She is one of the only women of color in the entire company.
It's
and
2021.
She is dope. Like, as a person, as a Black woman, but also as a producer, she's dope. So she's an asset to the company. But we talk about this all the time because, it's difficult to navigate when you're one of the only people of color.
Yeah. One of the few. Yeah.
It's just one of those things. Like, I don't see much of me around here.
Yeah.
And you have to be acclimated to that. So that just goes back to resources, and that's a deeper conversation about life in America, life in the West.
See.
You know what I mean? Anyway, so that we could get to that later, but
that makes sense. No, for sure, because listening to her story, she was doing something else, and at an older age, she interned, but she had the resources to be able to intern and not get paid that late in life. Do you know what I'm saying? Like. And then I have an episode with my homegirl, Linda Morale. She was Emmy Award-winning producer on Key and Peele. She's Latina, Latinx. She's a producer on the Black Lady Sketch Show. And we had this whole conversation, where, they were asking her, like, I want everyone Black on here. I want everyone behind the scenes. I want everyone Black. Well, there's an issue and a problem. She was saying that we need to cultivate this because, like you're saying, access information, resources. There's like, she's making a point to let people of color know, like, yo, there's a grip of jobs behind the scenes that, these white people know because someone in the business, like, oh, why don't you get on here? There's this and that and da 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 da. But Black and brown peeps, we don't know that. We don't have access. We're trying to survive. Like it's made a certain way. So I get it. I'm hoping that it changes. I want to see.
It's happening. I mean, it's
there happening slowly. Yeah.
Let me shout out one of my favorite people, but also a super dope music supervisor, Morgan Rhodes, who, used to be a PA of mine back in the day.
Dope.
She's just doing a bunch of cool stuff. She's got a great podcast with Oliver Wang.
Yeah.
The Heat Rock podcast.
Yes.
Morgan has worked with, some really dope directors and producers and done some super cool stuff. She's worked with Ava, you know what I mean? Like she's in the mix. Also, one of my favorite soundtracks was the Love Jones movie and soundtrack.
Yeah.
And that was done by a woman of color named Pilar McCurry. She unfortunately passed away a while ago. She was actually an understudy of my mentor for music supervision, G. Mark Roswell. So it's happening, but it's slowly happening.
Slow.
And, we just got to keep pushing because it is about resources, but it's also about talking about it because it's like, you got to plant those seeds too. Like, hey, you could be a music supervisor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
and
a lot
these
of
are the steps and this is what you need to do.
We're in hustle mode. We're just not exposed to even the idea.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I could do that. Like, that is a job.
Yeah, totally. And I reached out to Twitter and I was just like, hey, where are the music supervisors of color? And then I believe someone tweeted Morgan's name and a couple of other people. And I was like, yes, I'd love to see that. And I believe out of the couple that I was sent, I believe they were Black women. And I was like, I love it. Okay, so if you're good on time, I want to get into the last two sections, questions and comments from the audience. Let's get into that. This is, what is the process of keeping your integrity when you are in a position that can be manipulated, influenced by monetary factors or entities that want to pay you? This is by Coach Lamar Betts. We did an episode, and it's called episode 52, Skating with a Curl. He's Black and he owns the skate side, and we talk about that experience.
Nice. I think I'm fairly sensitive to that. And that's one of the reasons why there were certain positions once I gained notoriety through radio and DJing, like, A&R positions or, music industry stuff that would have, garnered a nice salary or whatever, I just stayed away. Sometimes I beat myself up about that because I had kids. So it's like, I've had conversations on, both sides of where the pendulum swings with people that have completely opposite, different perspectives in terms of like what it means to, be integral, what the levels are, what it means to sell out, that at a certain point, the idea of selling out has to go away because you have a life that you need to live and, you need to make money and you have mouths to feed and all these things that come along with like the American dream and the hustle and so on and so forth. So I've heard all these perspectives. And for me, I just broke it down to the sort of simplicity of like, serve the child inside.
Yes.
If you ain't comfortable, if the kid is going to be looking at you like you're whack.
Looking at you sideways like, what?
Like, come on, man, what happened to you?
Yeah.
And so I didn't pursue those kinds of offers because I knew people and there were people in those positions that I knew. Some of them were fine with evolving and accepting certain mores and ideas and perspectives that I know 5, 10, 15 years prior, they would have disagreed with, or they didn't jive with very well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's because society, man, like, you know, class and moving up that ladder. Like, it's like, well, what are my options right now? So I believed in myself enough to, as a creative person, number one, like I said earlier, I'm just not that corporate of a person. I was just, I don't really want a desk job.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to the same place every day. That's not me.
Yeah.
And the other thing was like, I don't want to have to like produce, A&R, sign, look after, accept, swallow, like dealing with like an artist that I might think is whack.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, remember
Yeah.
the Brown Sugar, you know, with Sanaa Lathan and what's her brother's name?
Yeah, I can't
I say Lorenz
see his
Tate.
face.
Not Lorenz Tate.
No.
It's the other talented, handsome brother. That's part of getting older, I guess. These names used to just flow off the tip of my tongue. Anyway, you remember the premise. Like, he was at that major label.
Yeah.
And, you know, they went and signed the Dalmatian duo. And it was like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I love hip hop and I got to go off on my own. So when that movie came out, I was like, that's why, like, I've never pursued that career path.
Yeah.
You know, like, because, so to answer your question, like, what do I do about it? I can't really look back and say that I've ended up in too many of those positions or situations.
Nice.
I've always just wanted to do my own thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm good. I'll do my thing.
Yeah.
I'll do what you know, and if that means not making as much money, whatever, you know, it's fine. Like, I was blessed enough to be in a position where I was hustling so hard. I was making enough money to take care of my family. I took care of, you know, my ex. When we started having kids, we had 3 kids, kind of like stutter step, like 2 years apart from each other. And for the first decade of her being a mom, she didn't work because being a mom was work enough. And it was like I want our kids to have the advantages of being nurtured by this woman. Yeah. And she did the damn thing.
Nice.
She made her own baby food. Like, she was in the mix. Yeah. Like, she, you know, when she saw an episode of Oprah where Oprah had on the Chicago faction of the Mocha Moms, and then like Mocha Moms started to sprout up in LA. So she joined up with the Mocha Moms. And it was just like the first 10 years, I didn't mind not sleeping. It was like, we doing it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
We getting it done. So it was fine. And I was in a position, like, I was like, all right, I'm DJing. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm moving. I'm sticking and moving. Like, I'm making enough money to take care of us. And that was satisfactory, you know? Nice.
And the fact that you stood your ground and you knew that outweighed the freedom, you know, of you being in the right place inside outweighed maybe getting this money, right? Doing that on your own is big. But I think on another level, doing it when you have a family and still sticking to your guns, I think it speaks volumes. You know what I'm saying? I think it's like, oh, okay, you really knew it. You knew what you had to do, and it seems like.
But that goes back to the relationship with the child inside.
Yeah, you just knew that it would kill you. You would be making a bunch of money, providing for your family, but it would kill you. And what would that be if you were just a shell of yourself? What kind of father and what kind of partner would you be? And I think that's amazing. Okay, let's go to the next one. It's just a statement. It's from
shout out to Tay Diggs.
Tay Diggs. I saw his face and I was like, Tay Diggs.
You like that dude right there. You know, I need to take some more ginkgo, you know, get back to my agenda.
Tay Diggs. I was like, I know his face. I know he was in, you know, he's married to, his ex was the girl in whatchamacallit, in Rent. Okay, the next one. She just did a major statement And she just says, Chocolate City changed my life. That's my homegirl, Karen Hernandez. I know her from the music industry. You might know her as well, but she just was like, Chocolate City changed my life. So that's just a comment. Next one.
Thank you, Karen.
It's another comment and a little story. Another friend that I know from the music industry. She's like, why is he so amazing? She's like, tell him the story. When Twitter was first a thing, I recall driving up over the hill and down Laurel Canyon, and it was like a 20-minute set that was amazing. So atmospheric. I felt like I was in a movie, and I tweeted something like, holy shit, at Garth Trinidad, what a set of music. And he replied, and I was really excited. That was Lisa Jenkins, also from the music industry. So that's that. Another one. Super curious to hear what he's been doing since he moved on. He's also a dope producer of music, so there's that. Our girl, Jessica Weber, owner and co-founder of Cosign. So she wants to know, she
That's because me and her haven't caught up. We have to, Jess, we got to get on the phone.
I just saw her. She was out here. She owns a house out here. So I saw her. We had lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm jealous because we were supposed to have lunch.
So if she comes back out, come out to the desert, man.
Do you hang out in PS?
I live in PS.
Oh, see, okay, all right. Look,
we could talk about that stuff after.
Okay. Anyway, no. Okay. Look, first of all, I've needed to take a breath to recalibrate.
Yeah.
So I was, blessed enough to be in a financial position, and in a space where I took it upon myself to just like stop. So, like I said, it's been almost a year, and like I've done like two DJ gigs, but they were like private events. Like I'm not really, I'm not moving about the club scene. Like I'm just, and I'm gonna do some DJ stuff, but I'm moving out of like being identified as a DJ because I have other things that I want to do. So for me, it would be easy to continue to like just be on my DJ grind, but it's like, that's not where I want to be anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a visual artist. I want to get back into that. I bought a guitar. I want to learn how to play it. I have a book I want to write. I want to tell my story. I'm trying to figure out.
It.
I have elderly parents who, I want to be available to. I have, 3 teenage kids. 2 of them are, off on their own, going to school. Like one's out of state, one's out of the country. I'm, finalizing this divorce. I'm, looking at like what my career path is going to look like and what I want to do. So, I want to lean into like voiceover work because there's, it's fun and there's money to be made, and there needs to be more people of color doing it. And so I've been, I've done voiceover work for years and years and years, but like acting, voice acting is the same thing. You have to be available and you have to hustle. You have to put yourself out there. I have to update my demos. I have to like, reach out to agencies and managers like, hey, I'm looking for new representation. So, that's a part of it. And there's a few other things happening, of course, but there's a lot on my plate.
Yeah.
But mainly what I want to do is just like reignite the flame.
Yeah.
Part 2.
Explore. Yes. Speaking of your voice, I wanted to make sure I asked, when did that come about? Did you always have a deep voice? Was it after puberty? Like, when did this Garth essence happen?
Yeah. By junior high, people were making fun of my voice. It was like, it was crazy. It couldn't decide what it wanted to be. So I sounded funny. You know what I mean? And then I think I was 17 and I was talking to an operator and she was like, you sound so fine. Like, are you in LA? Could we go on a date?
Oh.
like she was macking on me, man. And I'm, oh, wow, like my voice is deepened. Like it was the first time I really understood, like, oh yeah, all right. And so, you know, I basically stole my dad's voice. Like I have my father's like Xerox copy voice.
Hilarious.
Like if we were on the phone, it would be difficult. The only way you could tell us apart is by like the vocabulary we were using, like the phrase. You know, he uses more old school stuff than I do. You know, but yeah, it was after puberty, and then it just dropped. I was like, oh snap! Okay, I'm about to use my advantage. You know? So.
Amazing. Okay, the next one. I would ask what current musicians, in his opinion, are interrupting our hyper virtual reality. What artists are bringing us back to a visceral experience of music, and as an extension, feelings of love, empathy, and understanding. This is from my homegirl, past guest. She's an arts and culture consultant. If you don't know her, I don't know if you guys know each other. Yvonne Gallardo. If you don't know her, you should know her. She's amazing.
I don't recall if we've ever met, but I certainly know her name. Yeah. But I think we met because her name sounds really familiar. That's a hell of a question.
Yeah. I love it.
I think there are numerous artists that are doing that. And I'm super happy about that because I feel like things move in cycles. Mm-hmm. And so much wonderful art, music, literature, etc., comes from hard times. And our generation, I think, is living in, I like to say, the most marvelous, interesting, difficult time in human history. You know, we are the generations that we've experienced a global paradigm shift because of technology that the world hasn't experienced since, I couldn't tell you, you know, maybe, I don't even know if the Industrial Revolution is as deep as the technological revolution. Like this is setting us apart from prior generations, and to grow up in it, like our generation, we're like the bridging generation. We remember chords on phones. We remember the birth of the cell phone. We remember the actual literal birth of the internet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like for the public space. Mind-boggling stuff. As far as artists, I'm moved. You know, I'm just a music lover, so I'm moved by a lot of artists. But and it's difficult to not have a list in front of me because I've really been, probably even on a subconscious level, detaching from listening to music as a DJ and a programmer, but just being a person who's listening to songs and getting back to loving a piece of music just for what it is. But I'm gonna say, like off the top of my head, Moses Sumney.
Oh, love him.
You know, one of my favorite bands is Little Dragon. I feel like they are our generation's like Sade, just in their dynamic, like the woman in the three supporting male characters in the band, and how unique Yukimi's voice is, and the kind of music that they make and the kind of subject matter they cover and the lyrics and everything. It's just when they first came out, I was like, these are my people right here. Them
doing a track together is just like, of course. I was just listening to it earlier today. I was like, of course, Moses and Little Dragon.
There's a lot of Charlotte Day Wilson, I think, has just a phenomenal out of Canada.
Love her.
But what Bad Not Good is doing for jazz, I put them in league with like what's happening in the sort of Leimert Park jazz community with Kamasi and all those guys. Who am I thinking of? Which is bringing me back to the conversation about visiting Palm Springs.
We definitely, after we stop, doing this, we definitely have to talk about the series that my homegirl put together at the Ace and the kids that she's bringing from Leimert Park out here and have this. We have to talk about it.
That's exactly what I'm referencing. What's
Mikey Maestro, I think is his name,
one
from
of them?
South Central.
Mhm. There's this beautiful documentary that aired on KCET that's garnered all these awards that are about this young drummer. And what is his name? And he's the drummer in the series. He's on tour right now, but he's the drummer. It's like, and he invited me. So I told him, he said he'd be back in December. So we have to make a date of it. Like I have to come out there. It's Wednesday nights, something like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Maybe I'm saying his name. Maybe that's his handle but yeah, that's the dude. He is amazing. I have some video of it. He is fantastic. Next level. And then he brought up this other dude, and I'll get you his name. He was a saxophonist, a young black saxophonist. His parents were there watching him, and I was like, yes. It was like amazing to see these young. I think it was like, the keyboardist, the homeboy on the drums, and the saxophone player, all black, young cats, like in their early 20s, from like South LA, with the residency over here. It was, I went solo. I was just like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. This is the new shit. This is it's like the old and the new shit. The resurgence.
Throwing concerts in the garage, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So that's just a couple of names. I mean, there are more, but I cannot pinpoint them at the moment. But yes.
Love that.
Yeah, man, just there's a lot happening there. I believe that there's been a renaissance happening in Los Angeles for a long time, like at least 15 years, if not more. And a lot of great stuff coming out of the West Coast, but just around the world, man, there's just and the energy is always going to come from the youth. You know what I mean? Always, and so the younger generations have access to information and to art in a way that we did not growing up. And you can see and tell how it's influencing them. And as they're going through their growing pains and they're watching the world burn and seeing how everything is going, they're being moved to create this wonderful art and this amazing music. So there's a bunch. But just off top, like Moses Little Dragon, Kamasi and the Lamert gang, like I just feel like they're making a wonderful impression. There's a lot of great hip hop, like underground stuff that's, coming out, and it's just like, it's marvelous. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. The last one of the comments and questions is, you've been a great inspiration to me over the years. Tell us about something or someone that has inspired your journey, a book, a film, a song, a figure, or someone may be able to, draw inspiration from. That is from Word to Your Mama, episode 14, guest, the legend, DJ Mona Lisa Murray.
Mona Lisa is one of my favorite people on the planet. Always has been. That's my sister right there. I've had a lot of inspiration. It's one of the reasons why I want to write this book and tell my story. I don't know why I immediately went to, some figures that have, passed on, but like Prince was a huge inspiration. Melvin Van Peebles was a huge inspiration to me. I have like a handful of visual artists that were really critical to my sort of visual thinking. Mode 2 is a graffiti artist out of, I think Mode 2 is French. But I remember discovering his work. He was part of a crew called the Chrome Angels that did like just some incredible graffiti pieces back like in the 80s and the 90s. On the West Coast, it was like Hex and Slick. Remember the graffiti battle that they televised? Hex, when he opened up the hip hop shop, and this is one of the things that me and Rocka bonded over in the beginning was the hip hop shop, because Rocka used to kick it over there and rap and stuff. And I used to, when I was in the Valley, I would come back like as much as I could just to like go see what new mural Hex did on the wall. And so he was a huge inspiration. Dali was a huge inspiration, Salvador Dali. Gustav Klimt, Egon Schiele were huge visual inspirations to me. Robert Williams was like one of my biggest visual inspirations with his kind of like, his pop surrealism, I guess, is like the genre. So all that kind of stuff was a huge inspiration. Musically, I grew up as a child of like hip hop in LA. So, Julio G, Tony G, the original K-Day, like that whole Battle Cat, that whole movement was, Uncle Jam's Army, like all of that. Ice-T is one of my biggest musical inspirations. I was, one of his biggest fans as a kid. I think so much so that it led me to run into him inadvertently. My dad was running errands and we were at the West Side Pavilion, and I saw Darlene. Remember his girlfriend, Darlene, yes. His wife?
Yeah, we all remember her on the cover. Yeah.
So you remember how fine Darlene, Darlene is just a phenomenally beautiful woman.
She still looks the same, by the way. She still is gorgeous as ever.
Because she'd be doing them aerobics. She's an aerobics queen. So I'm like, my dad he's in some store, and I'm, the brooding teenage boy with my Raiders sweatshirt on, standing outside, on the little balcony or whatever, looking at just people watching. And I see this woman walk into this shoe store. I'm like, oh my God, like this is, and I'm like probably a couple 100 feet away,
Yeah.
So I'm really leaning in like, ooh, like, damn, she fine. And I just like shift my gaze, like not even like a quarter inch, and Ice-T is standing there staring at me. Like, why are you looking at my woman? He's got the whole gangster thing going on. It was funny because it was just him and her, like no entourage or nothing.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, oh my God, that's Ice-T. And I'm probably like, I don't know, like 13 or 14 at the time. So I was big enough for him to stare at, you know what I mean? Like, oh, yeah. He's like a young man looking at my girl. And he was mad dogging me. I'm like, oh my God, I'm staring at Darlene. So I run over to the shoe store, and Ice had gone in and he's just kind of kicking it on the couch. I'm like, Ice, I'm just one of your biggest fans, man. Like, is it cool if I get an autograph? He's like, I don't have none. I'm like, here, son, I got a $5 bill. So I still have that.
That's amazing.
I think I'm framing.
Yeah, hell yeah.
But all those cats, man, like, come on, man. Like when NWA dropped, I was like, wow, it just, just mind-boggling. The whole West Coast movement, I was just like, wow. But, I loved all hip hop at the time. So I'd say hip hop in general is an inspiration. And that led me to discover jazz and funk, like for real.
Yeah.
Not just it's that we know about, but like, where are these samples coming from? Like, okay. So there's an army of inspiration, you know what I mean? But I think specifically those things visually, Ice-T growing, I memorized his rhymes, you know what I mean? Like I dissected so he was a huge inspiration for me musically. Tom Tom Club song, that's a huge inspiration, you know what I mean? So, but there's more. I have to empty out my brain, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it'll all be in your book. We'll see. Okay, let's get into the not so rapid fire questions, the AKA slow as hell questions. First one, 3 words to describe yourself.
Thoughtful. My lady says that I'm kind. And I hadn't thought of myself in that way.
Love that.
And creative, man. I mean, I'll never get away from that.
Yeah.
You know?
Awesome. Yeah, those are great words to describe yourself. Okay, the next one. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received? Señor Trinidad.
What is the best piece of advice I've received? It's cool if I take a minute, right? Because
of course.
Damn. I'm gonna say, because I've gotten some great guidance over the years from parents, peers, extended family, but going back to like the influence that hip hop had on me, one of the things that I carry in my heart is just the idea that it's that sugar-free line. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, which is, that wasn't a new concept. You could probably find it in the Bible. Like,
yeah.
A lot of those phrases come from the scriptures or whatever. So, but when he spit it that way, I'm like, okay, I get it. It makes sense. And then I forget the name of the film. It's like an action movie or whatever. And there's a Latin phrase that translates to victory favors the prepared, which is the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And I've tried to keep that in mind and heart, and also pass that on to like my kids.
Yeah.
Like, stay ready.
Yeah.
Stay ready.
Stay
ready. You'll be cool. You know what I mean? Like, you'll be good.
Yeah. That's great.
Opportunity never pass you by because you weren't ill prepared or not ready, or, and that's part of mindfulness and all.
Yeah. Major.
So okay. Yeah, it was a rap lyric that did it for me. Shout to Sugar Free.
Next one. Speaking of music, what's the song, your go-to song to get you hyped when you need it? Now, most people have issues with this because there's different songs for different situations. So if there's multiple, give me two. Damn.
Really, this is so difficult. Because it changes, you know what I mean? Like, let me see. I mean, like, there's different levels of hype. You know what I mean? Like, you mean like songs that make you, like, when they come on, they just make you happy? Or like...
Could be that. Or like, say, like, maybe, I don't know if you get nervous, but like, say there's a big event, or like, say you're like, concept phase, or you're about to do something you never done and you need that little extra pump, or, like there's just different types of situations where you need to get hyped.
All right. I'm going to just throw a few at you because I think there's just levels to this. Like, is like something that just sparks that joy. Like, as soon as the first couple of, like, I'm still the kind of cat that like jump in the whip and switch radio stations. Even though most radio is like, especially mainstream radio, it's hard. But I know that at some point, one of these stations is going to play a song that I love.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say Rufus and Shaka Khan, Ain't Nobody.
Okay.
Anytime that comes on, it's a rap. I'm going to say Robin S., Show Me Love. I'm going to say Al Green, Let's Stay Together. I'm going to say Sade, Sweetest Taboo. I'm going to say, like, Public Enemy, Welcome to the Terror Dome.
Yes.
I'm going to say, Razzcazz, Waterproof, H2O Proof.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to stop there. But
I love it. I love it.
You know,
I could see the different situations that those would be called for.
Not just knee deep. You know what I mean? Like P-Funk. I mean, like those are the joints. Like they come on, I'm turning them up. Like it's done.
Love it. Love it. Also, when we did our 1 year anniversary, I made a playlist of every guest hype songs, and it's a Spotify playlist. So I put it on every episode now, and it runs the gamut. It's amazing because you need different hype songs for different situations, right? So you would think it's only going to be one genre on that playlist. No, my friend. No, señor. It is all over the place, and it's a wonderful listen. So I'm going to add all those to that playlist. It's going to be fantastic.
Eddie Harris and compared to what? You know that joint, right? Harris Les McCann.
No, I'm going to have to look it up. I'm excited when people drop something that I'm not familiar with. It's exciting to look it up to add it, because then I get introduced to something new, or maybe sometimes I know it, but I don't know who the artist and the title. Yeah. Sometimes that happens.
You hear it, you be like, okay, yeah, I know.
Mona Lisa had one of those when she was on. She's like, you know it. She's like, you've heard it. And then when I went to, I was like, oh yeah. Because she was talking about when she plays it. And I was like, oh yeah, totally. So I'm excited to add those. Thank you so much. Last question. What will be your legacy?
Ooh. You know, I think human beings in general, especially in this era, we like, I'm reading Eckhart Tolle, right? And there's a couple of books that a friend of mine sent me during the pandemic of his that I'm reading. And, Eckhart Tolle delves into, he's one of the people that does this, but I appreciate him, his introduction with these books. But he gets into the whole construct of how, like, ego runs us. And we are living in an era where we have been, like, convinced that we are the ego, like we are the incessant thoughts, that little voice. And really what we are, you could say above or below that, we are the conscious observers of those thoughts, of that voice, which is why we're able to transcend, which is like, where you get into like meditation and prayer and all those things. Like we ultimately have control over that voice. The voice does not have control over us. So I say that to say that, like, life is precious and it's fleeting, and I'm getting away from things that are like superfluous. And I'm becoming a person. I want to become a person. My aim, my goal is to become a person that is detached, so that the egoic mind and the egotistical things of life do not affect me the way that they have. And so if I have a legacy, my legacy has already become me watching what my children are doing. I could die right now and be cool because of who they are now. Not even like what they become.
Who they are.
I have an
now.
18-year-old, a 16-year-old, and my son just turned 15.
Wow.
I'm like, I did what I came to do.
It's a beautiful
and
thing.
Therein, I think, lies my legacy. It's not in radio. It's not in DJing. It's not in art. Like, I could go on to like do things and achieve things in any of those realms or worlds or whatever, and be like, hey, this is my legacy. But that, to me, to my heart and soul, deep down in my spirit, that ain't it.
Yeah.
We had these kids, and my drive became not like to just take care of them or whatever. It was like, I have to like instill in them a set of values. I have to like, attempt to get them to be critical thinkers and to give a damn about life, about themselves, about other people, to be the light in the world as much as I can. And I think that my ex and I have been able to do that. So my legacy is probably my fatherhood, man. Like,
yes,
So that's my hope. That's what I'm going to say right now.
Beautiful. That's beautiful, man. I love that. And I think that's a perfect way to end this special time with you, Señor Trinidad. I appreciate you. You know, I love seeing your face. I'm excited to catch up right now if you have time after this. You know, not on the recording. And I want to see you, you know, when it's safe and we feel safe. And, you know, I think this is crazy exciting time for you. I feel it in my bones that you're going to be good and that your legacy is your children, but also you've brought so much joy in the world, given us so much of yourself, sharing part of your creativity. And I appreciate you. I think a lot of us do, but I'm excited to see where you're going to go from here. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not over. It's just a new chapter. So, muchísimas gracias, Garth. I appreciate you. And I'm excited to, you know, hopefully in the safe future, break some bread.
Back at you, Ritzy P. I'm going to see you in December. If we can hook up in Palm Springs, do that.
That'll be dope.
Concert at the Ace. That'll be super fly.
Yeah. Outdoor, safe, under the stars, on indigenous land. Come on.
Hey, I'm grateful that you thought of me for your podcast. I'm really happy to reconnect with you in this way. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
For this and for making your voice heard and bringing on people that you love and respect and regard. Like I that's phenomenal. So I appreciate being a part of that.
Gracias. And now introducing
the Supernatural Bear Corner. Supernatural Bear. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Supernatural Bear Corner. Now, I have something to say for you. For some of the people who go on the show, before the show, I have absolutely no idea who they are, actually. I've never heard of them in my life. And for this amazing man, Trinidad, DJ Garth Trinidad, I thought at first he had 3 dads because it said Trinidad, and usually Trina means like 3, bro, and it was a Trinidad, and that was funny. But anyway, DJ Garth Trinidad, if you are listening, I hope you had a great time on the show. And for everyone else, this has been the SMB signing off.
Shibidoo. Yeah. There it is, folks. Episode 56, however, I was going to say 65. Episode 56 of Word to Your Mama with the amazing Garth Trinidad, a.k.a. Señor Trinidad. I'm excited to see what happens. We had an amazing time post-recording, catching up on the next level, and I definitely hope to see him when it is safe so we could break bread. As always, you can find all the episode links, the links that were mentioned in this episode, either on the episode page or in any app that you're listening to this web episode right now. There'll be links, clickable links, such as the movie we talked about, The Keep It in Time by the Mochila Crew. Also, some songs that we discussed, some episodes that were discussed. And as always, from now on, you can definitely find the Word to Your Mama guest hype song playlist link that is on Spotify. Always will be included in every show note from this point forward. So all the amazing songs that he mentioned, boom, they've been added. So starting from episode 1 to now, they're all included. Also, we talked about Michaela's session. I was saying Mikey Maestro because that's his handle on Instagram. So that's definitely who he was talking about and I was talking about that was doing the residency at the Ace. Shout out to Charlie, Jane, who booked that. And, of course, his father was part of the Pan-African People's Orchestra. So he grew up in it, and then now he's actually leading it. It's an amazing thing. He's one of the many kids that I feel benefited from their parents really exposing them to the music at a very young age and maybe in their own way explaining the history of the music so that these kids and these younger generations, these young men and women can take what they know and take it to the next level. So it's very exciting to see. I love, seeing it live is incredible. So if you guys ever get a chance, please go see this amazingness live. And Supernatural Bear just laying it down in the Supernatural Bear corner, giving us his first impressions of his name. And yes, thanks for the support. We have a couple of more episodes to close out the year before we take a little break. But we'll be, of course, re-releasing or re-dropping, if you will, classic episodes that we've had from some amazing guests that are part of my tribe since the beginning of 2020, of the end of 2020. So the beginning of this situation here. So we have coming up next, I believe we're going to have Yvonne Gallardo. We're going to have a solo episode with her. We're going to have the last relatives episode of the year. And then the final episode of the year will be a little bonus episode with just the Supernatural Bear and I reading some of the reviews that we've gotten so far and some recent donations and all that stuff. So thank you so much for the support. You know where to go. You could shop, you become a patron, you could donate directly. And something you could do that's free is tell your peeps, tell your folks, and tell your friends. And as always, we reap. Word to Your Mama is owned and produced by Ritzy P. Intro beat produced by Nico Beats. If you want to know anything about Word to Your Mama, including Media Kit, go to wordtoyourmama.com. And as always, Word to Your Mama is brought to you by ritzyperiwinkle.com.